Welcome to the April 15th CNAB Public Development Call. The format of this meeting, we usually welcome newcomers, then we go through the fixed agenda. Radu has posted the agenda in the chat. And then we wrap up with discussing the various things we need to make sure we cover. So I'll give a moment here at the very beginning. If you're new to this call and would like to introduce yourself, feel free, but don't feel obligated. All right. Welcome, Jacob. That's our first announcement for the day. Jacob Legrone has been officially nominated as one of the new core maintainers of the CNAB specification, which is fabulous news. Jacob, if you do not know, has been one of the most prolific contributors to the spec and to the discussions and to the code base. So this is all great news for everyone. And thank you very much, Jacob, for being a willing sacrifice. I mean, for volunteering to spend more of your time working on this. Do we have any other announcements before we dive into the agenda? All right. So we have several PRs in flight that we wanted to make sure that we all checked in on. The first one is the claim spec. We've been working through iterating over one particular issue. That's issue number 349, I think it is. And I will let either Carolyn or Jacob take it away and discuss this one.
Yeah, I recently revised it, I think last week, and I'm just waiting for, I think, final review from Jacob before we decide if we need to
Is it just me or is she on loop?
It's not just you.
And of course, I have no Zoom control, so it will allow me to stop that.
It almost sounds like she's saying CNAB.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. All right. Let's see if I think we completely lost Carolyn on that one. Jacob, do you have anything you want to fill in here while we wait and see if she can rejoin?
She just upgraded to Catalina anyway, so anything could be wrong.
Yep. Sorry I'm not on video today, but I'm about 2/3 or more way through my last review. I just submitted some comments, but it's looking really good. I'm excited about the last change. So thank you, Carolyn, if you can hear me. Yeah, I think, but it looks good to me. There's, I'd really just have a couple superficial comments left.
Great, that is excellent. I know this one has been one we've been working on for several weeks, but I think we're pretty near the end of the claim spec at this point, right? We're probably talking about passes through to make sure everything is coherent after this one, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
That is excellent news. I'm very excited about that. Anything else we want to add on that one? And when Carolyn jumps back in, we'll give her a chance to finish her thought, but we can keep moving along if nobody has anything else on this one.
Everyone should be aware that, like, I think one of the larger changes is that outputs are no longer part of claims. So if any runtime implementers care about how they are handling outputs, please do review this PR.
Yeah, that's an important and very good change, I think. Thank you all for pushing that one through. It took me a while to understand why that one was necessary. All right, so when Carolyn rejoins, we'll return to that one. But for now, issue number 332, the Establishing Trust for Multiple Registries issue. I'm not sure who added this. It might have been Radu, but I think, go ahead, Radu, you want to take off?
Yeah, this change only needs a final rebase against master. It has all the review approvers. We've discussed it over the last 2 meetings. So if anyone has any other left comments, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Prashant to just rebase against master and we can merge it.
Yeah, I'm doing that as we speak.
On a completely unrelated note, does Trishank have the amazing disappearing coffee mug that you can pull out of the ether today? I think that thing is, there we go. All right, yeah. Thank you, Zoom, for matching a background to a coffee mug. It makes me happy every time. Okay, so and I think I've reviewed that one already now too. That was 304 section 304, right? Yeah. Okay. But for sure, let Chris and I know if there is any in that order. Chris first, then.
That's I think it's 302 or 303. 304 has a separate agenda item.
Oh, okay.
Later.
But let us know if there's anything you need us to do to help read through that. Should I move on to 362? Issue number 362. This one, thank you all for, I know a lot of people have been working on this. I think Sylvan's been working on it, and Chris and Radu, and probably others at this point too. We have an initial draft for the registry specification after having placeholder text for about a year. So this one's fabulous. Radu, you want to summarize this one?
Yeah, this is just to let everyone know that we have a draft pull request to have a look over it. The text is by no means final. It's just we moved over. We had a document that Sylvan, Chris, and I worked over the past couple of weeks in a HackMD and decided to move it over to have visibility into the community. So it still has some sections that need filling out, particularly about on-disk representation and things about thick bundles. But it should give a fairly good indication of the direction where the registry spec is heading. So if you have a few minutes, that would be a really good PR review.
What's the criterion for merging this one? Are we going to try and get a full rough draft done before merging it, or are we going to try and merge it earlier and then fill sections out periodic or as we go?
Personally, I would like to have something a little bit more fleshed out, or at least all sections, at least a fleshed out direction where this is going, and then have it merged. I wouldn't want to wait until everything is finally agreed upon before merging. I want to iterate on it just like we did with the security spec. But if people have different opinions, I'm very open to suggestions here.
I would agree with that. I think we could also punt on some of the sections that we don't have code for. So like the on-disk representation, we can leave as a to-do until we have a clearer idea of what we want to do there. Just looking at what we have so far, I think the one piece of low-hanging fruit that anybody can pick up and kind of finish off is the annotations. And I think Radu, you and Sivan know exactly what we settled on in the end. They changed so many times, I've forgotten exactly what we settled on. There's a couple of things around what different registries, what workarounds we had to put in for different registries, but we may be able to punt on that to later. Other than that, though, I think we're in a pretty good place. Oh, and some stuff around storing non-container image items, but that's another area that we don't have a lot of prior art, which makes it a little tricky to make sweeping statements about.
I'm waiting for Radu to catch up on the notes before making him talk.
Yes, sorry, I'm taking notes and trying to comment at the same time. Yeah, I think the annotations part is definitely something we should add before merging the initial draft. As about non-container components, it would be nice to have a note, but I don't think, given that we don't have an implementation yet for storing non-container components, I think we can go ahead and merging as is. And as we understand what are the requirements for distributing non-container components, I think we can update.
There's a bunch of work I know happening at the OCI and whatnot on that. So maybe as that stuff falls out, we can kind of fold it in. I was just looking at the, I think there's an example that needs to be built up, but yeah, it's annotation, that example, and I think we're basically there.
I keep getting distracted by the note taking. I'm like, should I?
And then the only other thing we should add is our notes about the implementation, about how CNAB to OCI works. And I'm unclear whether we should add a new section like we have on the registry spec. We have a 304 known implementations that talks about Signy and how it works. I think we can have something similar for registry as well to talk about CNAB to OCI.
Yeah, that's probably where a lot of the why does it do it this way can be explained, because there is a bit of weirdness around, where images are stored and things like that. So yeah, and also what workarounds we've had to put in place.
Yeah. I think that's about it on that one, right? And we can, Radu gave us a nice segue in there by mentioning Signy oh so coyly right before the next issue, which is the Signy 0.0.3 release. That is a very non-committal release number right there. But you want to go ahead and describe what you've been working on there, Radu?
Sure. Right now we're at 0.0.2, so this is a significant increase in version number. The TLDR here is that the last release was a couple of months ago, and we've had a bunch of significant changes to key management. We've updated Go modules, Go 1.14. So it's a fairly significant change, and I think we should have a 0.0.3. And I think whoever is a maintainer on Signy can see the drafts release notes that I put in there. It was just a heads up that we're going to release that, and if people depend on it, this is not overriding any release, so it shouldn't break anything. But if you want to support the latest changes, particularly about key management, this is you should probably update to this release. And is there anything here anyone wants to add?
No, other than I mean, we welcome testing. It'd be great if you could test it in your, repos and see how it goes.
So if Semver was mapped to relationships, so like a major release was like getting married or something like that, I suppose that means 0.0.3 is basically like saying, yeah, I suppose we can exchange one more text message, right? Is that?
Given that this is a recorded meeting, I will just say yes.
Oh yeah, this is recorded, isn't it? For all posterity, I have just likened release numbers to relationships. Okay, so I was going to have Vaughn today talk through the now accepted proposal for how we're going to tag and branch the GitHub repository, but he couldn't make it this morning, so we'll table that for next time. But he had proposed a branching and tagging strategy that ended up working quite elegantly. So if we can put that on for next time, that'd be a good thing to just cruise through really quickly now that it's convention. So I think that brings us to our last discussion item, and then hopefully we'll have time for a couple demos. Oh, and Carolyn is back. So we'll do the security known implementations one, and then we'll give Carolyn a chance to circle back and then maybe roll into her demo if she'd like to do that. So issue number 288, Radu, you like owned the agenda today. The CNAB Security known implementations PR.
That's what everyone gets for letting me put the agenda together. This is the last major piece of the CNAB Security spec work that Prashank and I have been doing. Particularly, this is exactly what I was mentioning in the CNAB registry spec, which is a document that should be evolving to represent the current state of known implementations for the particular spec. And so far, we only know of Signy, and this is the reason why I made the release for Signy to update the 304 document, which should be rebased against the current version of the CNAB security draft. And once we merge this, we should give the CNAB security spec a whole read once more, just to make sure there aren't any obvious gaps in there, and then slightly urge people to review one more time. So anything to add in there, Prashank, maybe?
I think it's a good, I looked at the document. I think it's a good, as a working draft, I think it's ready to go. Of course, we can always add more details over time, but I had fairly minor comments on it.
Yeah, I tried to address the comments from the original review you've had. The main difference, essentially the main work item that is not resolved for that document is related to how Signy works and to transparently testing if the tough collections have in-toto metadata, which we currently do not do. We have to explicitly ask for in-toto verifications. And once we add that in a future release of Signy, we should update the document as well. But I wouldn't hold on the document until we have that, given that it's an actual work item for Signy.
Exactly. There's no reason to hold off on it.
I look forward to reading through it today.
Cool.
We will take that as a commitment on the minor version number scale. So
It's going to increment to e to the negative 24th.
It's going to be 0.0.3.1.
Yeah. Okay, so Carolyn, when you dropped off, Jacob picked things up and said that he is in the process of reviewing the claim spec proposal, but please go ahead and continue.
Oh, I didn't have anything other than, we backed out the change to bumping the revision for non-modifying actions. So that got taken out. And instead we introduced an identifier for claims. And then we're using that to kind of allow results to reference back to its claim instead. So that's kind of like the meatiest change, if anyone's interested in going back and taking a look themselves.
Okay. And then Jacob said he's midway through a review, so we'll probably get rolling on that one. Carolyn, do you feel like you want to taunt the demo gods and do your Docker Compose demo?
Catalina gods.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking this morning, but let's do it. Let's see what happens. Okay, so this is actually something that Vaughn did in conjunction with Josh Delitsky, and I'm really excited about this. This functionality has been in the Docker driver forever. So what Josh did was he added the plumbing in Porter to enable Porter to say to the Docker driver to flip on basically the necessary configurations so that inside the bundle, it can have access to the Docker daemon that's on the host and potentially to be able to also flip on privileged containers. And the reason why we did this is, obviously it's off by default, and for good reason. This is why we turned it off and added this as configuration. But we had a lot of people asking for the ability to either run a one-off Docker container, or the other ask was to be able to run Docker Compose. They were very interested in doing this. And so we're looking for a way to not only safely do it, but having a really good user experience, especially maybe around Docker Compose, because it seemed like kind of an interesting intersection of what Docker app was already doing. We want to make sure that we'd be able to have a way to do that in Porter and not have it suck. So I wanted to show you how it works right now. Anyways, let me just show you how it works right now. And let's see if this works. Oh my God, because it may not. Oh no, it's asking me for Zoom will not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. All right, I'm gonna have to show this next week. I'm sorry. But we have a Docker Compose mix-in now. We have the ability to do these kind of things. So I'll show the demo next time. But what I want to do is invite people, maybe after I do the demo, to kind of have people, if you're interested in contributing or looking at improving the experience of Docker Compose, especially now that there's a spec around it, we'd be keenly interested in making this a better experience for people with Porter. We just kind of expose the CLI, but I think there's a lot of room to maybe support the spec instead of having a shim between Porter's YAML file and then going out to the Compose CLI and then going out to their own Compose file. Like, I think we could do something really cool actually if we wanted to. So if anyone's interested in looking at this, like I said, I'll demo next time because obviously my Zoom is totally trashed. But I think it'd be really cool. So I'm sorry I upgraded to Catalina.
Oh, the smallest of things. This is why we will all be employed as software engineers for the rest of our lives.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
I did miss a demo. I did miss an item. Did you want to cover quickly the in-toto verification stuff? I'm sorry about that, Radu. We have still about 5 minutes remaining, so if you want to.
Yeah, just a little bit of background on that item is the way in-toto verifications work is the computer where the verification has to be made must run the in-toto CLI and check the integrity for any in-toto artifacts like layouts and links. And it must have, first of all, the in-toto CLI, as well as any tool that the verification process needs. Like it must, if the verification process needs to unzip some files, if it needs to check some digests, the host machine needs to be able to run those things. And those things may be process or architecture specific. They can be operating system specific. So we cannot really make the decision at bundle creation time, at layout building time, what tools need to be used. So we decided early on to run those verifications in a container image, very similar to how we use invocation images in CNAB. So right now, in order to make the in-toto verification process, you have to spin up a container, copy in-toto artifacts, and then run the verification process there. The main question here is, how does a bundle author define that container image, and how does it get distributed? Should there be any difference between a verification image and regular CNAB images? And I'll pass it over to Tushank, because he and I have been chatting about this.
Yeah, no, thanks for raising this, Radu. Yeah, so what Radu is saying is correct. So when you have a software supply chain for your bundle or image, in-toto, it not only checks like, okay, did the right developer sign off on the source code? Did the right machine build the binary from the source code, and so on? And in the end, it does something called an inspection, where it might, for example, if let's say the thing is a tarball, right, or a zip file, it would unzip it and then check, okay, yeah, what's inside the tarball is, for example, the source code that one of the developers signed off, right? That's a simple example. And to do this, you need to have tar. Maybe you use the Python module, right, to unzip the tar, or maybe you just use the tar utility on Unix. The point is that what Radu was saying is that we want to bundle what's called a verification image. There's a different way of doing this, which is to run the command directly on your machine, but that's not a great idea for many reasons. So putting in the container image makes complete sense, especially because we're CNAB. So Radu's question is, how do we distribute this verification image? I think it's as simple as telling in-toto. So in the root layout, there's something called an inspection, where you tell it to. So in like normal times, the simple ways to say, untar this zip file, right? But here in this case, we would say Docker run, for example, or something more agnostic, and run this verification image. And we would just distribute the verification image the same way we distribute bundles and images. I think it should be as simple as that.
The main question, I guess, there are two main questions. One is, can client tooling overwrite a verification image? That's one. And then should that verification image be part of bundle JSON? Or given that it's just a base image that has some in-toto CLI on top of it, it is generic enough that we can skip adding it in bundle JSON and have it and have client tooling conventions that image can be used. And if we do that, should we allow overwriting it?
That's a good question. I think it should be, so to answer the second question, Vis, is I think it should be above bundle.json, because the software supply chain talks about bundle.json. And the software supply chain is the thing that uses the verification image. So I think it should be separate, not part of bundle.json, something above it. So the same way we distribute the public keys that we use to verify the supply chain, it's the same mechanism we will use to distribute the verification image. I think it's just a very natural way to do it.
It can also be a convention of client tooling which verification image can be used, unless another one is specified by the bundle itself or by tough metadata?
Yeah, I think the tough metadata will be the one to tell you which, just like where to get a supply chain, what public keys to use to verify the supply chain, and what verification image belongs to the supply chain. I think that's the programmatic way rather than hard coding anything, because then you can change, right? How you do things. To answer your first question, should client tooling be able to override this? I think it's complicated. Because suppose the verification image is actually hard coded, right, as part of the software supply chain. Just like the rules shouldn't be ignored. So when you're verifying a software supply chain, you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to take the rules you gave me and check that everything checks out, right, end to end. If you can override that, I mean, why even bother checking the software supply chain? There might be good reasons. I haven't thought about this.
Let me put it another way. If we go back to the original way in-toto works without a verification image, you rely on the host environment of the machine performing the verification to have any client tooling necessary to perform the verification steps. This doesn't give you guarantees around consistency of environment and reproducible steps. So in-toto in itself doesn't give you that either. The other question is, if my internal company's process requires additional environment to be able, for example, I want to log every in-toto operation that happens, and my container image allows that. Is my process is specifically tailored, and my container image is built in such a way that any in-toto verification I do inside the container is logged in my internal logging system. I think we should allow that, not specifically disallow it, either in implementation or in the spec.
Oh yeah.
I don't think this invalidates anything in the in-toto spec, mainly because it doesn't say anything about the environment where the verification is run.
Yeah, you're right. It's an interesting question. This didn't occur to me before. So when you run an inspection, you're expected to run it in your own environment. And in our case, we're saying run it in a container. And in your case, you're saying you may not even want to run in a container that the software supply chain is expecting, but your own. I don't think it goes against the in-toto spec. It's just, it might change. Sorry?
No, sorry, you're hearing the train that is going through my town. Forgive me. Go ahead, Trishank. I'll mute. I have a comment afterward.
Sure. Yeah, again, nothing technically blocking. It's just not the way in-toto works right now, because it basically just runs whatever you tell it in the inspection. And if you wanted to do what you wanted to do, then that just needs to change a little bit. I need to think through this.
Let me put it another way. Signy right now allows you to specify your own verification image. As long as you have the in-toto CLI in that container image, and your tooling copies any in-toto artifacts inside the image in a default directory, then it works with any container image you supply, as long as it has the in-toto verification, which is exactly the minimum requirement that in-toto expects from any host environment trying to run a verification.
Yeah, I think it's just something that we need to standardize on. It's not something that in-toto does by default, but as long as we standardize this and understand that there's some caveats, because for example, it may actually go against the wishes of the original supply chain person, right? Who says, you must run this verification image, not your own. But it's your machine, so you should be able to do what you like. As long as we standardize on that, I don't see why we can't do why we can't support the use case you're talking about.
If I may, it sure seems to me that what you're talking about is you've got two sides of a supply chain. One is the producer, the supply chain metadata that we would like to verify. That producer has their own needs and desires, right? It is their confidence and trustworthiness they're wishing to project, right? Whereas the consumer is wishing to validate or protect them by confirming such metadata. because presumably they have to turn around and, in an audit or, a verbal confirmation, must turn around and say, yes, we were able to validate that chain, probably in a conversation with the legal department, preparing some sort of lawsuit. But the critical thing here is that almost all of these operations involve different audiences for different purposes, and you're going to need to be able to state that the entire supply chain is basically out of band. And what we've done is we've created these protocols and these tools that implement the protocols, but they still rely on an out of band agreement that this is the process we're going to take for one or more sides. In that case, it sure seems to me we'll have use cases where there is a specific image that is prescribed, but it is an out-of-band verification that that image was used. And then there will also be cases where somebody wants to customize or use their own image, but for them, that's their out-of-band choice. So the idea of that there being exactly and only one container is almost always, in the way I'm thinking about it right now, it's almost always going to be an out-of-band organizational choice. And so we probably need to sort of delineate those and have those be kind of paths, but they don't sound like since in-toto doesn't specify any statement there, they sound more like statements about workflow and ability and use case rather than anything else at this point. Am I understanding things correctly from your perspective?
Yeah, and you're right in the sense that when in-toto says, hey, run this inspections, it doesn't tell you exactly where to run it. You could run a completely different machine if you wanted to, right? It doesn't stop you from doing that. So there's no reason why you can't. Sorry?
I think I just clicked the unmute button, but go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I keep hearing some feedback. I'm not sure. Could just be me.
It's certainly, I'm running on Linux, and then basically feedback is my second name.
Yeah, there's no reason why we cannot. In a sense, one thing we could do, not that I don't recommend, is that we can fool in-toto into saying, run it in this environment, right? So there's no reason why we can't do that. We just need to be careful.
Jacob also posted a good question. So imagine a high-scale marketplace solution for a major cloud provider, just to use that, and then put in that environment, for example, Jacob's question might become very, very realistic. There could be any number of throughput steps that need to be verified for massive amounts of images and bundles and things like this. Just arbitrary steps. What do we want to call them? I guess in-toto metadata blobs, right? That have to be validated. In which case, something like what Jacob is mentioning here might be the optimal computational way to do that, rather than individual containers launching individual processes and spawning them.
Again, there are two types of verifications we do with regards to in-toto. One is structural integrity of root layouts and link files, and the other is actual verifications that the product owner defined. Like Shank was mentioning, unzip this file and expect this particular file with this content digest, for example. This example can contain any number of steps that the product owner of the root layout decided to put in there. You don't have any guarantee that the machine, that the environment you're trying to run that inspection in has any sort of file or even the same operating system that the product owner expected. So we're mitigating that with a container image.
With a container,
now,
yeah.
The actual structural validity of the files, we do that outside a container anyway.
Exactly.
So if you want to run everything but inspections outside a container, you can. And if you want to optimistically hope that you have everything available outside of a container,
that is native programming as it exists today.
Yeah, and which is the exact way in-toto works right now.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to have the option to run it, I think the spec should anyway. The spec does not dictate any of this, right? The spec just says you have to run the in-toto verifications defined by the root layout. Where you run those, it's up to specific implementations. And I guess the final reason we have, the final discussion we have is around what should Signy's default implementation should do here. And I'm okay with us carrying on this discussion offline as well, given that I assume not everyone on the call is interested in this discussion.
I saw Docker Compose for a brief moment.
Yeah, I think maybe it's best to bring this offline or next week too. But to answer Jacob's question, which is legit, real quick, is that yeah, we can say in the software supply chain, just don't even bother running a container, just run the sequence of commands on your machine. If it doesn't work, too bad, you know. But this is what we expect you to do. We can do that, no problem.
All right, so should we table this one till the dedicated security meeting next week? And Carolyn, you want to try and do your demo? We do still have time on the allocated budget if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, if people are okay with that. I think I've conquered Zoom. I don't know. Okay, I apologize for doing that. I just wanted to see if I could share or not. It's more of like a personal grudge, really, with Zoom. So this is a Porter YAML file for a bundle that is using Docker Compose, and it's using a Docker Compose mixin that Vaughn wrote. And there's a couple new things in here. One is it's using a Docker Compose mixin, but it also has another section in here that's pretty new. It's saying that it has a required extension, and the extension that we kind of made up for now just to kind of test and trial out, and that we'd like to propose to the spec if this seems to be working, is we'd like to say that we require inside of our bundle access to a Docker daemon somehow. We need the runtime to connect in a Docker daemon for us. And there's two different ways you can do it. One, you can just say, I need access to a Docker daemon. So like, usually you can do that mostly just by like giving us the Docker sock, but maybe there's another way to do it. It's up to the runtime to figure out what it could do. But it also can, oh, a second, I can never spell privileged right. But you can also have a configuration option as well, saying that in addition to giving you the Docker daemon, I would also like to allow you to spin up privileged containers as well. And the reason why we put this inside the bundle itself is because we want to be able to communicate up front before someone even decided that this was a bundle they'd like to use. They knew that this bundle required elevated, sketchy privileges that you know, depending on what tooling you're using and how you're giving it Docker, may be elevated privileges that you're not keen on using because it may be exposing your host to the bundle. So this one just uses Docker Compose. So it only needs access to basically like the Docker sock. We're going to mount it. So it uses a mixin called Docker Compose. And for the moment, what it looks like, just to get it working, is that in like the install step, for example, it'll take the arguments up and detach here. It has a custom action PS to just like list what's running, and have an uninstall. So as you can see, like it just basically shells out. Oh, wait, sorry, I don't have chat up, so I can't see if people are asking questions. Yeah. So as you can see, like it has, basically it's just kind of like adapting to the Docker Compose CLI, but like it would be really cool to think about now that Compose is a spec, like could we do this different and have it look more native so that you're not essentially, like you wrote your Compose, right? Like here it is. Is there some way we can not have like a 3-layer burrito around it? Anyways, so this is what it looks like inside of Porter here. So we have our Compose file, and we have Porter here. So if we do Porter install, and I remember the bundle asked explicitly to access your local Docker. So if I do an install, it's going to say, whoa, 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 this bundle needs access. And we came up with it, like an extension name. We call it IO-CNAB Docker. That's not the like final name, but just to make the demo work. But you as the user need to explicitly grant this, because this is an elevated privilege that you may not want to do, because it's actually going to give it the way Porter does it, like mounting your Docker sock, give you access to your host. So I'm a dev. I don't care. Let's copy paste because I type this wrong every time. I will give you access to my local Docker daemon. So then it runs and everything looks great. So now let's do Porter invoke action. We have that custom one, PS, right? And again, we're going to give it access to the host. That gets old fast, right? So we don't want to do that every time. So there's two different ways you can do it with Porter. Porter, all the flags, you can also like either do it as an environment variable. So you could do like this, export, or not export, like you do like Porter allow Docker host access, right? And you could run it like this then, invoke action equals PS. It would be really helpful if I had set a value there instead of just typing it. Okay, true. That's cool, but again, like it's a lot of typing every time. So Porter has one more level here where you can just set it in your config file in Porter's home directory. And now I can just do the shortest thing, the thing I want to do the entire time. I never recommend you do this unless like you just don't care about what bundles you're running and what they're doing, because this will always give access to every bundle you run, access to your Docker daemon. And it's listing then everything there. And then we can uninstall it. So that's compose. Yeah.
Could you scope the mounting of the Docker socket to specific mixins? Maybe that would be a useful way of making it slightly less horrible.
To specific what?
Mixins. So for example, you could say, I allow these mixins to have these extended privileges or something like that.
I have to think about that a little bit more, maybe offline. Like off the top of my head, I don't have like a great answer to that. I'm not sure how that would work, but let me write that down.
Or if you could do something like say that you always trust an invocation image with that permission that has a given digest. Could be interesting.
Yeah, like an allow list.
Yeah, and then even it's like some bundles might use the same invocation image, but you've already declared trust for that image. Or if we had a signature that you trust as well, then any invocation image that's been signed by a given party could be allowed that permission.
That would be cool. If anyone wants to contribute and maybe open up issues and help think about these things, I would really appreciate it. Because I think that this feature could open up a lot of different scenarios that people have been really interested in doing with bundles. I see a lot of people interested in doing pipelines with their bundles in ways that we hadn't anticipated. And a lot of that involves then doing more things with Docker inside of bundles. And being able to lock that down appropriately as opposed to just having like this really big do not flip this switch. So doing this securely would be, I think, really important so that we don't just give people a foot gun. I wanted to show you one more thing, which is how to just use pure Docker inside of a bundle. The mixin itself, let me go back to the compose mixin. The compose mixin did a lot of more heavy lifting that I didn't really show. It actually handles installing for you. Like you don't have to do this in your Docker file. The mixin generates this for you. It generates all this lovely stuff for you, so you don't have to do it. But let's say that you just wanted to, can you show what the bundle JSON looks like? Sure, yeah. So for compose, the bundle JSON ends up in this CNAB folder here. And one second, let's format this. Yeah, so a little hard to read. So we get our custom action for PS. Porter stamps a whole bunch of fun stuff on it. And then we have here our required extension. No, Radu, I hate canonical JSON. Let's see, we have our invocation image. I don't know if there was a specific part you wanted to see. We've kind of made up a new required extension that we haven't proposed yet, just to kind of feel out the usability of this, of saying that we absolutely need this new kind of thing called hook me up with Docker, we don't care how, extension. Was there something specific you wanted to see?
Cool, that makes sense. I just wanted to see what you're putting in the custom map.
Yeah, okay. It's not terribly exciting, but just,
yes, but
a little bit more.
You end up with the runtime being decoupled from the build, right? As far as like if you pass any bundle in that's even been built outside of Porter, possibly that has this IO CNAB Docker key in the custom app, then you're going to treat it the same way.
At the moment, there is like the only thing that would come through is that configuration. If I had said like privileged, that would come through so that people would know, the other runtimes would know that they also wanted privileged containers. But I hadn't specified that for this one. This is something that if we like it, like we're just kind of experimenting here with Porter, but if we like it, we can propose it as like another like non-normative required extension kind of thing that different tools could recognize and support or not.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of interesting configuration that we might need to be able to declare, like resource requests or limits, the run as user, privileged access to a Docker socket. Like, yeah.
Yep. This is what I mean. This is why I would really love people to kind of help coordinate on this and see what else we can put in there. This is kind of like the very first step to kind of get this kickstarted and see what it could look like. If you don't have a mixin and you just want to use Docker, you can just kind of install it yourself. I use the Docker version manager here in a Dockerfile template for Porter and just installed it myself here. And then inside of Porter, I'm using Docker's lovely whale say. I love that so much. It's so cute. And I'm just using it to make a bundle that just prints stuff back out. And this kind of mimics what people have been asking for, the ability to just run random Docker commands inside their bundles. So that you can do things like, wait, let's see if we flip this here. Yeah, I think I did. For ultimate cuteness. Yes. So those are the two things we have working right now. But I don't know, I'm just putting out a call that like, if people would like to kind of help open up issues, either against spec or maybe on Porter so that we can kind of ferment and like try out ideas and see how they work first and what it would be like. Oh wow, yeah, I don't know about replacing the Docker CLI, but maybe replacing all the commands that you send to the Docker CLI, all the arguments, environment variables, and working directories and volumes and everything. With like a nice packaged little command would be kind of cool. Yeah, so that's just what I want to show people. Get people thinking about it. Hopefully it's not like the worst idea in the world to expose this up. Definitely we want to lock this down more, and I'm really excited that people already have ideas for how we can more selectively expose this safely.
That's awesome, thanks.
And then notes about where people can go to contribute. Radu, I can't find the notes on my screen anymore.
It would just be the main Porter repo. Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, I came pretty close to breaking your record. I'm only over a full 30 minutes from where we were last week. But we are coming up on the top of the hour, which is the end of the meeting. Anything else we need to make sure we get through today, or that somebody would like us to make sure we drop on the agenda for next time? All right. So next week is the security meeting, where probably in-toto and getting getting through those other two security PRs are going to be the big topics of the week next week. And then, of course, we will reconvene here in 2 weeks, during which Chris will get to moderate the meeting that time.
Or someone else.
And if someone else
Or-
puts together the agenda, hopefully we'll finish earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
No, this is a great agenda. This is really good. And seeing demos and things is always good. So, no, I'm happy for the longer ones.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. And thank you for working through all those technical difficulties, Carolyn, and still presenting an awesome demo. I appreciate that. I know that's stressful.
Oh, thanks for everyone's patience with me.
We'll see you all in next week or the week after for this meeting. Bye.
All right.